Crazy character journey for her and for all the other characters, and I absolutely wanted to dive into.
Ryan Reynolds got caught saying the unthinkable about Blake Lively by the one person he never expected to overhear him. That person? His own co-star Sydney Sweeney. And what happened next? She didn't go public. She didn't say a word. But Hollywood made sure she paid the price. From a career on fire to mysteriously canceled deals, vanishing premieres, and being wiped clean from Netflix's biggest release. This isn't just a PR mess. It's a brutal takedown. Stay with us, because you're about to see how one overheard moment 30,000 feet in the air triggered a silent war in Hollywood that no one wants to talk about. In April 2025, Ryan Reynolds and Sydney Sweeney wrapped, filming Glass Chapel, a film that, from the very beginning, stood out as a peculiar project in both of their careers. Netflix had poured a sizable budget into the moody, artistic romance thriller, a genre hybrid that leaned more into mood and metaphor than traditional plot. Shot entirely in black and white and almost completely devoid of music, the film relied on stark visuals and hushed dialogue to evoke emotion. It was a risky move, a far cry from the blockbuster superhero roles that defined Reynolds or the glossy pop drama projects that had previously shaped Sweeney's brand. But that was the point. Glass Chapel was designed to be Oscar bait, and everyone knew it. Their pairing, while unconventional, generated significant press. Ryan brought the commercial appeal, while Sydney gave the film a younger, edgier credibility. The press labeled them the unexpected duo we never knew we needed, and for a brief moment, they seemed to revel in the buzz. Tabloids speculated on off-screen chemistry. TikTok edits of their behind-the-scenes interactions went viral. The pair's premiere was elegant, stylish, and tightly controlled, one of Netflix's most calculated rollouts in recent years. All cameras were on them, and they played their parts perfectly. But what the public didn't see was the brewing tension behind closed doors. While the Paris red carpet was a glitzy display of unity and success, the energy off-camera was strained. Crew members noted the lack of post-filming celebration between the leads. There were no shared interviews, no Instagram posts tagging each other. Something felt off. That unease carried into their private studio-chartered flight back to New York, a flight that would shift the trajectory of Sydney's career forever. A flight where something was said, something personal, raw, and deeply revealing, something that, once overheard, couldn't be unheard. The atmosphere aboard the flight back to New York was quiet and reflective. The film had premiered successfully, and the worst should have been behind them. But instead of celebration, the mood was tense, particularly around Ryan Reynolds. He was seated in the front section of the jet, a glass of scotch in hand, deep in conversation with one of the film's producers. Unbeknownst to him, Sydney Sweeney, who had gone to retrieve a charger from the galley, happened to pause just within, earshot behind the divider. What she heard wasn't just casual venting. It was personal, piercing, and shockingly candid. Ryan was speaking openly about his marriage to Blake Lively. According to what Sydney overheard, he described it as more of a walking contract than a relationship. He lamented that the image the public adored, the perfect couple, the cheeky Instagram banter, the polished red carpet appearances, was a carefully managed illusion. She controls the narrative, Ryan reportedly said. I'm just the product. He spoke about feeling trapped inside a persona, that every joke he made, every public move he took, was curated to align with the brand Blake had built around them. He didn't mention divorce or separation, but there was an unmistakable sense of suffocation in his tone. I'm not even sure if I exist outside of us anymore, he said. It's all Blake, all the time. To Sydney, the words were shocking, not just because of who said them, but because of how they shattered the illusion so many believed in. And though she didn't confront him or react in the moment, what she'd heard stuck with her. She quietly returned to her seat, unsure of what to make of it. She didn't record anything, didn't take notes, didn't tell a soul. But the Hollywood grapevine doesn't need receipts. It only needs whispers. And by the time that plane landed, someone else had started talking. After the eerie flight home, Sydney Sweeney returned to her Manhattan apartment with a gnawing unease. She hadn't spoken about what she overheard, not to friends, not to her agent, not even to her diary, but something shifted, like a trap door, had quietly swung open beneath her feet. Within 48 hours, the subtle tremors began. Her team noticed it first. A routine check-in with a luxury skincare brand about an upcoming ad campaign got a vague reply. On hold. Then, a final round of talks for an Apple TV Plus miniseries, in which she was already semi-attached, went silent. Not delayed, not rescheduled, just evaporated. Her publicist tried following up, only to be met with ghostly non-responses. Her stylist was told to pause fittings indefinitely. Initially, Sydney thought it was just post-premiere slowdown. Glass Chapel had been intense and exhausting, and sometimes the industry took a breath after big launches. But then, the pattern solidified. A PR firm she'd partnered with suddenly cited restructuring and stepped away. A production assistant she'd befriended on a previous shoot texted her asking, "Are you okay? I heard something weird in the office." That cryptic message stuck in her head. She looked back at the flight. Ryan's voice, tense, confessional, frustrated, still echoed in her mind. He hadn't known she was behind the partition. He didn't know she heard him trashing his marriage and Blake, but someone else on that plane might have. A crew member? Another assistant? Did they see her reaction and draw their own conclusions? Sydney stayed quiet. She didn't want to seem paranoid, but then her calendar, once bursting with color-coded appointments and deal memos, started to look like a desert. In 1 week, 5 projects froze. Not canceled, just pushed, delayed, looped into limbo. All unofficial, all untraceable. It felt like being unplugged from the grid. The worst part? No one said a word, no accusations, no scandals, just eerie, professional silence. The kind that doesn't yell at you, it forgets you. And Sydney began to realize this wasn't coincidence. This was control. A slow, strategic turning of the Hollywood faucet designed to dehydrate without drawing attention. She wasn't being punished out loud. She was being faded out, scene by scene, frame by frame. A week later, things turned sharper. Sydney got a call from a director she deeply respected, a low-key auteur who'd worked with her on an indie project years ago. His voice was warm, but laced with concern. "I brought your name up in a casting session," he said. One of the execs flagged it. Not officially, just informally. They said there might be a conflict. Nothing specific, but they called you high discretion. Sydney didn't understand. High discretion? Was that code a euphemism? The director hesitated, then sighed. "It means you're considered a risk. Like, you hear things you're not supposed to. Say things you shouldn't. It's vague by design. That's how they do it." The phrase clung to her. Not difficult, not unprofessional, just inconvenient, dangerous. Someone to keep out of the loop. She hung up and sat still, heart racing. The dots were connecting. Someone had told someone else that she'd heard Ryan's confession. The problem wasn't that she repeated it. She hadn't. The problem was that she existed in the memory of it. Her mere knowledge was a liability. That night, Sydney Googled herself obsessively. There was no press coverage, no blind items, no gossip blogs whispering scandal, but industry silence is louder than tabloids. And in those executive rooms, the ones without cameras, without transcripts, her name now came with a footnote, a quiet warning, a yellow flag. Handle with care. She tried confronting her team, but no one could offer a clear explanation. Her agent promised to get to the bottom of it. Her publicist suggested a rebrand, as if changing her Instagram theme could stop the bleeding. A makeup artist casually mentioned she'd heard Blake Lively had a new PR deal in place and was rebuilding the Reynolds family brand. That's when Sydney knew this wasn't fallout. It was framing. She was being positioned not as a villain, but as a threat. And threats in Hollywood don't get fired. They get erased. By the second week of silence, Sydney had stopped checking her email. There was no point. Every ping brought more ambiguity. A campaign restructure, a press junket reschedule, or a co-star taking time to reset. It wasn't rejection, it was disappearance. She found herself rereading text messages that once buzzed with energy. Producers saying, "Can't wait to work together." Actors DMing, "Let's grab drinks after promo." All of it faded. Her manager, once constantly juggling her packed calendar, was now offering vague encouragements like, "Things are quiet across the board," and "Let's be patient." Then came the quiet confirmation, a casting assistant she'd bonded with. During a 2024 pilot shoot messaged her on Signal, the encrypted app. "You pissed off someone big," it read. "People think you leaked the Reynolds thing, that flight. You didn't, right?" Sydney's stomach dropped. The words were like a slow-motion bullet. She hadn't leaked anything. She hadn't even told anyone, but that didn't matter. In a town built on optics, truth is negotiable. Perception isn't. Suddenly, every small oddity made sense. The stylist who ghosted her fittings, the makeup artist who pulled out of a con partnership, the talk show that ran out of time for her segment. Sydney wasn't being iced out randomly. She was radioactive by association. She couldn't shake the suspicion that Blake's PR team was behind it. The way things moved, so polished, so clean, so deniable, had a seasoned strategist's fingerprints all over it. Blake was a brand, not just a celebrity. and Sydney had become an inconvenience to that brand. To the public, nothing seemed wrong. Sydney still posted smiling photos, still had millions of followers. But behind the scenes, her world had thinned out. Her trainer canceled, her driver changed routes. Even her assistant hesitated to ask questions. She was still working, technically, but the needle had stopped moving. There were no new offers, no invites, no premieres. She became what Hollywood fears most, a name no one wanted to say out loud. And Sydney understood the code now. Don't touch what might touch Blake, even if it's innocent, even if it's true. It took a clumsy mistake to confirm everything. A 22-year-old studio intern posted a TikTok that lasted only 3 hours before vanishing, but that was enough. The video, cryptically captioned, "We don't book Blake's enemies," showed a casting spreadsheet with blurred names and red flag notes like PR concern, media risk, and one chilling tag, overheard flight, unstable. Toward the US, internet moved fast. Fans screen capped it, dissected it, and quickly pointed toward Sydney. The clip hit Reddit, and though no names were fully visible, the references were too specific. Sydney's team went into panic mode. Her agency, which had remained largely calm through the last few weeks, suddenly began damage control. Calls were made. Sydney was looped into sensitivity sessions. She was advised to lie low, quietly. Then came the anonymous email. It arrived in the dead of night. No greeting, no signature, just a scanned internal memo attached. High-risk booking, Sweeney S off-camera instability. Discretion issues, proceed with caution. The document was dated April 22nd, just 3 days after the Glass Chapel premiere. Sydney stared at the words for hours. She kept rereading them, like they'd suddenly change meaning, but they didn't. This wasn't speculation anymore. This wasn't just vibes and silence. It was calculated, written down, actionable erasure, and someone had gone to the trouble of leaking it to her anonymously, as if to say, "You're not crazy. They really are doing this." She forwarded the memo to her agent. They never replied. The weight of it settled in her chest. Sydney wasn't being punished for doing something wrong. She was being erased for being in the wrong room, hearing the wrong thing, being the wrong woman at the wrong time. Now, it was all in writing. The global premiere of Glass Chapel on April 19th was supposed to be Sydney's moment. For months, she'd been prepped, styled, and told she'd have center stage press visibility. It was her first leading role in a prestige film opposite one of Hollywood's most bankable names. The red carpet walk, the interviews, the stylized Instagram posts, they were all part of the campaign, or at least they had been, until the studio went dark. 3 days before the premiere, her publicist received an odd update. Sydney would now attend as a private guest. No interviews, no red carpet, no press. Her stylists were furious. They'd custom-fitted couture weeks in advance, coordinated schedules with photographers, planned content drops. Now, they were left scrambling. Sydney, blindsided, asked her rep if this was some sort of mistake. The reply came a day later, not a mistake, studio decision, nothing personal. She didn't go. Ryan walked the carpet solo. Dressed in sharp monochrome, he smiled for the cameras, flanked by executives and influencers. But there was no mention of Sydney. No shout-outs, no questions from reporters, no indication she was even part of the film. Fans noticed immediately. Reddit threads buzzed, "Where's Sydney? Did they split promos? Is this a scheduling thing?" But it wasn't scheduling. It was strategy. That night, Sydney watched live stream clips from her apartment in Manhattan. The film she'd anchored, emotionally and physically, was being presented to the world as a one-man show. Her face wasn't in the thumbnails. Her name was absent from media tags. Even social media coverage from the official Netflix accounts skewed suspiciously Ryan-centric. Even worse, paparazzi photos surfaced showing Sydney out for dinner, alone, the same night as the premiere. She hadn't tipped them off. Someone had. The image circulated with cruel captions. Snubbed, uninvited, replaced? Back in her inbox, her team was silent. Not one person explained what happened, and Sydney finally understood what. It meant to be erased, not through scandal, not through a public meltdown, but by precision, with just enough silence to make people forget you were ever there. The next morning, Sydney tried to pretend it was just a blip. She liked a few fan tweets, posted a moody photo of coffee and clouds to her Instagram story, and answered a text from her mom. But the deeper she looked, the more disturbing it became. Official Glass Chapel press kits, which had previously featured both Ryan and Sydney prominently, had been updated. Her name had been removed from headlines and thumbnails. Trailers posted on YouTube were quietly swapped with newer versions, now highlighting Ryan alone. Her lines were still in the film, but any promotional mention of her was gone. The algorithmic tide had turned. Fan accounts were the first to notice. "Where's Sydney?" trended briefly on Twitter. One account posted side-by-side screenshots of the film's homepage on Netflix's press site before and after the change. In the earlier version, Sydney's face stood opposite Ryan's in grayscale glory. In the new version, she was replaced by an abstract chapel silhouette. Comments flooded in. "This is calculated. Did she get cut from her own movie? WTF happened behind the scenes? The manipulation was precise, surgical." Even the film's IMDb listing was tweaked. Sydney was moved from top billing to third. When questioned, the studio issued a generic statement about poster refreshes and artistic realignment. It convinced no one. On TikTok, creators stitched old clips of Sydney on set with captions like, "She carried the movie and they buried her." The most viral video showed a screen cap of her now-deleted Q&A promo for the film, overlaid with eerie music and the words, "They erased her in real time." But the most damning moment came when a Netflix promotional reel aired during a YouTube ad spot. Featuring behind-the-scenes interviews with the cast, Ryan spoke about the film's emotional core. The director discussed the monochrome aesthetic. Sydney was never shown, never mentioned, never even acknowledged. It wasn't just that she was being erased, it was that it was being done so seamlessly, so confidently, that the public almost missed it. Like she had never been there. Even her stylists, normally silent professionals, began commenting subtly on social media. One wrote, "Hard to dress a ghost." Another posted a carousel of unused looks with the caption, "What could have been?" Sydney didn't respond publicly. She didn't post a selfie or go live. She didn't call the press. Because what do you say when your silence isn't the story, but your absence is? Less than 24 hours after the Glass Chapel premiere, when headlines should have been focused on the film or its artistic risks, a new story took hold, one carefully seeded by someone who knew exactly what they were doing. Blake Lively, who hadn't attended the event, posted a pristine photo on Instagram, her and Ryan laughing together at what looked like a lavish cocktail party. The lighting was soft, the frame tight and intimate, the caption a single heart emoji. But the moment wasn't from the premiere, it was from a charity gala months prior, now repurposed to tell a different story. Fans noticed, "Wait, Blake wasn't even there last night." One commented, "This isn't from the premiere." Another wrote, linking a Getty Images archive that confirmed the outfit's original event. But most didn't care. The image was so well-timed, so emotionally crafted, that it quickly drowned out the whispers. Around Sydney, articles shifted tone. "Ryan and Blake still going strong," one headline read. Another speculated that Blake had skipped the premiere to avoid the drama surrounding his co-star. This wasn't coincidence, it was narrative control. Blake had long mastered public relations, not just for her own brand, but for Ryan's, too. Her post subtly reasserted her position without ever naming Sydney. She didn't need to. The image did the work. Ryan belonged to her. The chaos around Glass Chapel, unimportant. Look at this curated love. Look at the story we've told you for years. Behind the scenes, some media insiders suspected a larger strategy. One journalist leaked a tip. Blake's team had reached out, days before the premiere, pre-approving which outlets could use photos of her and which ones to avoid, namely anywhere Sydney might appear. The manipulation was quiet, efficient, and devastatingly effective. Even the studio's official Instagram posted a carousel of premiere images, all of Ryan alone, smiling for the cameras. No group shots, no co-stars. Sydney was conspicuously absent. Again, Sydney's absence, once a question, was now an answer. And Blake's photo? It didn't just rewrite the night, it rewrote who mattered. By the week's end, Sydney had become a trending topic, not for her performance, not for her red carpet fashion, but for her absence. Her name was a question mark, her silence louder than any interview. No one from Netflix commented, no one from Ryan's team clarified. Sydney's own PR team issued a single-line statement about her focusing on future projects. It was corporate code for exile. Insiders began whispering about the flight. Podcasts hinted at a mysterious falling out. Anonymous industry blogs posted speculative timelines tracing her erasure. But no one named names. No one accused. It was all suggestion, implication, silence. The message was clear to every young actress watching. Hollywood doesn't need to blacklist you publicly. It doesn't have to. It just stops returning your calls. It erases you from the room you helped build. You don't get fired, you get forgotten. Sydney's story became an urban legend in real time. Aspiring stars on TikTok debated what she could have done differently. PR experts weighed in on how to avoid becoming a Sydney. Twitter threads dissected how one overheard conversation could lead to an entire career being quietly dismantled. Sydney, once a rising icon, now lived in the shadows of what happened. And in a final twist of cruel irony, Glass Chapel began receiving critical acclaim. Ryan was hailed for his bravest performance yet. Oscar buzz grew. Sydney was barely mentioned, not because she wasn't brilliant, but because she wasn't allowed to be. Her final scene in the movie, a whispered monologue about truth, betrayal, and memory, hit differently now. Fans clipped it, shared it, gave it new context. They can erase your name, but not your impact. So let's recap. Sydney Sweeney co-starred with Ryan Reynolds in what should have been a career-defining film. She overhears him trashing his marriage to Blake Lively mid-flight, and suddenly, her entire career momentum stalls. Brand deals ghosted her. Casting calls went silent. Her red carpet moment? Gone. And somehow, no one officially accused her of anything. Yet the message was loud and clear. It begs the question, did she really get erased for something she didn't even leak? Or is this just how Hollywood protects its golden couples? Let us know what you think in the comments. Was this just bad timing, or was Sydney silently punished for being in the wrong place at the wrong time? If you want more stories like this, the truth behind the headlines, hit like and consider subscribing. We've got more coming that you won't see on the front page.